Hello again, everyone. I'm Diane Shelby, and it is my honor to introduce the recipients of the 2019 Emerging Writer Awards. We have a lot of people to thank for these awards, and I see a couple of them in the audience. So I want to say thank you, Peyton Evans and Carol Balick, who make the Mariana Russo Award possible. I also see Holly Merrill, whose advocacy and has resulted in the Dogwood Foundation funding permanently the Scotty Merrill Award in memory of her fabulous mother. And I don't see Cecilia. Oh, yay, you're here, yay. And thank you, Cecilia Joyce Johnson, for making the award named for you possible. The Emerging Writer Awards recognize and support writers who possess exceptional talent and who demonstrate potential for lasting literary careers. These recipients were chosen from hundreds of applications and three rounds of reviews by, I counted, 28 readers. Many of these readers were past award winners. The finalists were chosen for the Scotty Merrill Award was chosen by Billy Collins. The finalist for the Mariana Russo Award was chosen by Peyton Evans and Carol Balick. And the finalist for the Cecilia Joyce Johnson Award was chosen by Cecilia Joyce Johnson and Joy Williams. So we have a lot of talent brought to the choosing of these recipients. Award winners receive full tuition to the seminar and the Writers' Workshop program, an honorarium, and full support for travel and accommodations. And they also receive the opportunity to share their work with you. This year's award winners are Joe Dornich, who is on my far right, who received the Cecilia Joyce Johnson Award for a short story. Michelle Penaloza, did I get it? Penaloza? Okay, Michelle Penaloza, who received the Scotty Merrill Award for poetry. And Ross Feeler, who received the Mariana Russo Award for a novel in progress. Congratulations, all of you, and we're all expecting great things from your careers. Leading off with reading today will be Ross Feeler.
When I found out that I would get a chance to read on this beautiful stage for all of you beautiful and erudite people, I was ecstatic. And then when I read the schedule and learned that I would be reading directly after Joyce Carol Oates, I was slightly less enthused. But thank you so much for coming and for staying. The prologue for my novel, Tarsh, is included in your programs, and so I'm going to start right after that with chapter 1, the beginning here. midnight, Ansel unhooked a hangered button-up from the rear passenger oh-shit handle of his Camry, and carrying it caped across his back, re-entered his grandparents' house. Built in the 50s, the geriatric 3-1 protested audibly as he tiptoed onto the tobacco-brown fuzz carpet, a series of bony pops, followed by a thin whining, like a poorly tuned, poorly played violin. Ansel stepped into his childhood bedroom and stripped, tossing his shed clothes on the floor. He still wasn't used to this. The time warp sensation, 30 years old in a high schooler's confines, complete with posters and trinkets and memories. Tacked to the wall, a black and white Bob Dylan peered off into the distance, a harmonica fixed to a metal contraption around his neck. On the shelves, statuettes of basketball players still blocked shots, pulled down rebounds, and finger-rolled layups. Ansel slid the checkered shirt off its hanger and onto his arms. Thumbing each button through its slit, he guessed which bars would still be serving. Even the prospect of an elbow-to-elbow Buffalo Wild Wings with a hollow-eyed waitress and a legion of UFC fans sounded better than lying in bed for hours on end, wishing he could sleep and listening to his grandfather fight his own battle with insomnia. Ansel unzipped his gym bag to grab a pair of socks, noticing then how few clean clothes he had left. He'd need luck and deodorant, to last the week without learning to use the rusted washer in the den or gutting the hefty bag of laundry in his truck. He hoped the week would be enough. He hoped to be en route to Nashville by Monday. He hoped cautiously, knowing that faith comes before the fall. In the bathroom, he pawed at the back of his head until the grease from his palm placated the unruly patch of hair. He opened the vanity and pulled out the ibuprofen. Pills pausing midway down his throat reminded him. Carl needed meds too. He found his grandfather slumped forward with his elbows on the rickety kitchen table. An unfolded map lay before him like a giant place setting. Asked whether he'd taken his prescriptions, Carl responded with staccato breaths, like he'd recently been sucker punched, which, in a way, he had. Husbands are supposed to die first. Ansel repeated the question. Pills, Carl said, as though scanning his memory for a definition. Yellow bruising encircled his left eye, in which a spot of blood like a salmon egg floated, bright against the backdrop of his sclera. His right eye had suffered no damage in the crash, and the effect was that he appeared to be perpetually winking, a sad trick for a man whose sense of joy seemed all but gone. From the neck down, the accident had only exacerbated old problems rather than creating new ones. His achy left knee seemed achier. His arthritic knuckles had swollen even larger, especially those of his right hand, which now bulged against the skin like unshelled pecans. Carl continued smearing his fingerprint up the laminated map. What are you looking at? Ansel said. Interstate 37. Since Carl's arrival 6 days earlier, this had been what passed for communication. Selective hearing, grunts, single-word replies, echoes. Always laconic, in his new role as widower, Carl was approaching muteness, as if the world were no longer worthy of his voice, as if his grandson deserved no explanation of the circumstances surrounding Hilda's death. Ansel lifted a pill box from a basket on the counter, 14 rectangular compartments, Sunday through Monday, AM and PM. Why is your little calendar empty? He said. I'm on vacation, Carl said. So let's take a trip to, Ansel lined up the pill bottles, Tramadol. Carl scraped his dull pocket knife along the top of his forearm and then squinted at the blade on which a pale layer of dead skin had settled. I've been there, he said. I have a book you might like, Ansel said as he deposited pills into slots, called The Year of Magical Thinking. I don't care for fantastical shit, Carl said. It's about a woman whose husband dies suddenly, nonfiction. I don't much get hard for reality either. I'll grab it from the car. I'll grab it anyway, Ansel said. Reading might help you sleep. In the back seat, Ansel slit the duct tape lid of the liquor box and folded up the cardboard wings. He located the Didion memoir as a hail-dinged mid-90s Camaro chugged to a stop at the curb. Scraping the adhesive off the blade of his old-timer, he waited for the visitor, probably drunk and misreading a GPS, to realize that this was the wrong house, unless this was the right house. His mind raced. The brights flashed, momentarily blinding him. Through smudges of light, he watched a woman shakily climb out of the driver's seat, a dense shadow that might clarify into something extraordinary. Dozens of times he'd revised his opening statements, tinkering with syntax and emphases, how to convey his simmering resentment, submerged hope, linguistic felicity to signify his status as an educated adult. The words evaded him now, dictionaries lost, one proper noun left over, Elaine. Thank you.
Hello, thank you all so much for being here. I'll be reading 3 poems for you today. Variations on Prayer and the Color Brown. My mother sends emails telling me to be happy and grateful, reminding me of the day's saint, instructing me to pray the rosary and how to. There are differing views on origin and history. Did the Virgin Mary give St. Dominic a strand of beads in a vision? Or did people simply make a way to count their prayers? My Lola had visions of St. Anthony of Padua, patron saint of lost items and souls, of native peoples, amputees, animals, of barrenness, of Brazil and Cebu, patron saint of counter-revolutionaries and the elderly, of fishermen, of harvests and horses, of poor and oppressed peoples, of Portugal and pregnancy, patron saint of shipwrecks, starvation, swineherds, travelers, and runts. He appeared to my Lola in the midst of her prayers. His arrival shook the nipa roof. In his benevolent presence, my Lola pled for St. Anthony to save my Tito Ubing from the illness which the doctors they could not afford could neither name nor cure. She placed cold towels on her son's head while she praised St. Anthony for his sermon to the fish in Rimini. A multitude, in peaceful, perfect order, rose up, smallest to largest, lifting their heads out of the water to gaze upon his face. Lola praised St. Anthony for converting the heretics of Rimini with the miracle of penitent fish and called on him, doctor of the church, fish whisperer, heretic hammer, bearer of brown habit and three-knotted cord, Anthony of Padua, save her son. And he did. And my Lola, my beautiful Lola, whose skin sang against fabrics of coral and pink and cerulean and jade and ruby and chartreuse and indigo and gold, pledged to renounce all color for the rest of her life, to demonstrate her devotion. This was always my mother's answer when I asked her, "Ma, why does Lola only ever wear brown?" Variants of brown according to Wikipedia: amber, beaver, beige, bronze, buff, burgundy, burnt sienna, camel, chestnut, chocolate, coffee, cocoa brown, copper, coyote, desert sand, ecru, fallow, fawn, field drab, khaki, lion, liver, mahogany, raw umber, russet, rust, sand, seal brown, sepia, sienna, smoky topaz, tan, taupe, tawny, umber, wenge, wheat. When I was born, my Lola could not believe how dark I was, how dark brown, parang itim, almost black, she supposedly said. Even in her love, what she spoke was her fear, that darkness would mar me, that likeness to blackness was a matter of concern, enough for exclamation and later prayer. She gave me an ironic or hopeful nickname, Mochico, after the sweet white rice flour she used to make palitao, housed in a thin white box marked by a single blue star and red writing. If I look at my hands, my arms, my face in the mirror, I might name my hue sand in the fall, camel or lion in the winter, copper and sepia in spring, seal brown in summer. Lola, long dead, I still enter her old room and find her rosary made from pressed rose petals. I cradle it in my palms, perfuming my hands with her prayers. I don't pray. I just wonder at the fragrance a brown bead can hold. How many petals, how many roses to make just one bead? Thank you. You have two more, just so you know. Thank you, though. I appreciate it. This next poem has an epigraph from Bernard Heuvelmans. I butcher French a little bit, but he was one regarded as one of the founding figures of the pseudoscience of cryptozoology. The mythifying process can alter its object beyond recognition. pioneer. I have had many men profess to me their love of my people. The first boy I ever let touch me marveled at the difference in our skin, my hairlessness, my taut brown. His eyes wide, I felt his white hands spread me open as he whispered to someone else in the room. I knew she would be tight. Yeah, it's a light poem. And for my last poem, has anyone here ever read, it's a young adult novel from, I want to say the 70s or 80s. I loved it as a child, Island of the Blue Dolphins by Scott Odell. Oh, yay, okay. When we rehearsed yesterday, everyone was like, no, never heard of it. So, and if you haven't, you should read it. It holds up. I found it at a residency, and I was like, oh, I haven't seen it in forever, and I reread it, and I still loved it. For those who don't know, it's essentially, you would think it wouldn't be so compelling, but it's just about a girl surviving on an island alone. Upon rereading Island of the Blue Dolphins, I remember the ache to hunt for devilfish and live among the sea elephants, to gather abalone and sharpen my arrows and hooks by the light of tiny, slow-burning silverfish, to weave yucca and tend to my own home of kelp and whale bones. I wanted my own wilderness, a blanket to wrap around myself, the relief of solitude, the salve of animals as my only company. I learned an otter would not withhold its affection, would only offer its belly to your offers of fish. I wanted to be the last of my people, a girl without mother, father, sister, brother, a girl belonging to no one, my only belongings, a cormorant skirt and a cage of tiny birds. My only family, the wild dog that killed my brother, the wild dog I could not kill, and so fed and tamed and named. Thank you.
Before I get started, I just want to take a second and express my thanks and appreciation for this opportunity. Over the last handful of days, all of us really, have met so many lovely and inspiring people. So thank you to everyone who worked so hard to bring us here, and thanks to all of you for having us. It really means a lot. I'm going to read the first few pages of a story called Camp Vampire Kids. Mom and I are driving to camp and playing the game where we think of jobs that I could one day have that won't compromise my condition. That's how she phrases it. Mom and I spent a lot of time avoiding things that might compromise my condition. What about a blackjack dealer in Vegas, I say. Mom groans in the way that makes her nostrils flare. What's wrong with that? There are no windows, plus casinos are busier at night. So are emergency rooms. You could be a doctor. You always say that, I say. Then I turn and stare at the window. We pass a field and some white cows that look purple through the protective tint. I could be a bouncer. Yeah? At a strip club. Mom takes her eyes off the road just long enough to look me over, all elbows and knees and reedy angles. Who are you going to bounce? Hey! She smiles and blows me a kiss. Our game continues. Mom and I go back and forth suggesting jobs that are noble and practical, hers, or silly and adventurous, mine. What we don't say, what we never really talk about, is that I'll be lucky if I live long enough to do any of them. Mom pulls the car into an off-ramp. We need gas. You coming inside? I nod. Then get your gear on. I don't need it. I'll just run from the car to the store. I won't get burned, I promise. Mom hits me with the full wattage of her pleading gaze. Can we please not do this? Not again. Fine. Mom and I also stopped at a gas station the first year we went to camp. We were lost and went inside for directions. I had my gear on then too, the gloves and the jumpsuit and the face shield. I remember the man behind the counter and the way he stared at me even when Mom started speaking to him. Craryville, he finally said, dragging his eyes from me to Mom. What do you want to go there for? We're headed to Camp Fun Without the Sun, Mom said. And when he asked what that was, Mom told him about the camp, the kinds of kids that go there. Yeah, he said, a smirk stretching across his face. Like little monsters, little vampires. He turned to me and brought his fist to his mouth, made fangs with his index fingers. Then he hissed. Mom lost her mind. Truly, there was a moment of micro-insanity where she just screamed questions at the cashier. What the hell is your problem? What kind of person are you? Can't you see he's just a little boy? Things like that. The man didn't know any of the answers. Mom put a hand on my shoulder, steered me towards the door, then she stopped, turned around, and kicked over a display of Cool Ranch Doritos. She was still fuming as we bounced along the camp's gravel driveway and entered the clearing in the Craryville forest. The other mothers took us inside, sat Mom down, poured her a jelly jar of white wine. They told her how they'd all been there before, how they all heard some version of judgment and cruelty spit at their kids, how people followed them through stores, snapping not-so-surreptitious pictures with their phone. Some jackass wants to know if my son is a vampire at least once a week, one of the other mothers confessed, which is just so stupid, so ridiculous. And it is. When I met Cameron a little later, he was, with his chubby cheeks and ginger crew cut, the least vampire-looking kid I have ever seen. We've also been called Midnight's Children, Children of the Moon, Children of the Night, Shadow Kids, Night Walkers, Night Dwellers. Other people simply point and stare, exchanging whispers and laughter in a classless language all its own. But the most common attempt at creativity, the pejorative we hear again and again, is vampire kids. I wish it were accurate. Imagine a vampire. Now take away the strength and the speed and the immortality, and what are you left with? A pale guy with a terminal reaction to the sun. That's who I am. That's who we all are. We're all born this way, but our genetic disorder lays dormant for a while. Depending on the particular variant, we'll get anywhere from 4 to 6 years of day living before it kicks on, 4 to 6 years of pool parties and playgrounds, of normalcy, of friends. I was lucky. I was 8 when my immune system could no longer protect my body from the sun. Cameron jokes I was a late wilter. Then I was young enough that Mom could coax me into my gear by playing to my imagination and sense of make-believe. She'd remind me that my UV-protectant jumpsuit was the kind the astronauts wore. She called it my special costume, and for a while, it did make me feel special, unique. Now it makes me feel like a freak everywhere I go. Everywhere but here. Thank you.